Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everybody.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples for how small, emerging, and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can build their business. Everything from determining if you're ready to grow, where to start, how to prove it online, how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, driving your business with the end consumer, and how to go about finding an investor if that's important to you. The bottom line is, we would love to help you be successful by highlighting the many important factors that go into establishing and growing your brand.
Bruce and I have been working in CPG commercial operations for over 30 years, working on brands of all sizes. By commercial operations, we mean sales, marketing, trade marketing, new product development, broker and distributor management, new product development, brand M&A, and financing. As a part of our show, we bring our guests that are brand founders and leaders, agencies, Amazon specialists, sales agents, contract manufacturers, retailers, and investors to discuss their experiences and share their insights with the audience.
To keep up with the show, please subscribe to the Road to Retail podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. You can also check out our website to learn more at www.road2retail.com and follow The Road to Retail on LinkedIn. We would love to have you along for the ride.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Road to Retail. Good to see you, Bruce. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Tracy. Great to see you. Juiced up for the show today.
Absolutely. So tell our audience who we've got on our show today.
Great guest today. We have Rob Catanzariti, Vice President at the Emerson Group and a personal friend of mine. So Rob, welcome to the show and thank you for your time today. How you doing?
Very good, Bruce and Tracy. Thank you. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be part of Road to Retail and what you both are doing for our industry in a fun and dynamic way. So appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys today.
Oh, well, thank you. So Rob, as we kick off, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your background, what you've done, and how you've come to your current role here at the Emerson Group?
Yeah. I mean, my role here at the Emerson Group, Vice President of the Emerson Group, is about really supporting brands, right? And if you think about it, I've been here going on 5 years here at the Emerson Group, and what I lead, as well as part of our team, is we assess new emerging brands, existing brands that could be good clients and good fit for us. So we'll do the assessment. Once we find a fit, we help the brand with onboarding and training to our systems and processes. And then from there, we help with sales strategy, go-to-market strategy, as well as data analytics, reporting, shopper and category insights, and last but not least, marketing services. So that's kind of what I'm up to every day here for the past 5 years. Prior to that, I spent 25 years in the CPG industry, working at Pfizer Consumer Healthcare, better known as Haleon these days, building brands like Advil, Centrum, Emergency, and switching Nexium. But for those joining the podcast, if you don't know the Emerson Group, a little bit of a plug on who we are and what we do. I mean, at our core, our purpose is to inform, elevate, and transform health, wellness, and beauty brands. That's our purpose, and our mission is really to be the best partner to our brands, the industry at large, and deliver the most integrated capabilities to help brands grow, which includes omni-channel sales, logistics, which is distribution in order to cash, analytics, insights, strategy, marketing services, and brand management. We do all this in the US, Canada, and Mexico. So that's kind of me in a nutshell and what we're proud of that we've built the last 30 years here at the Emerson Group.
Well, thanks, Rob. And, before we kick it over to Tracy, I can just say I've had the privilege of being around the Emerson Group as a friend of the firm and a client, and you guys have built one hell of an operation. So well done. And you guys have a unique talent of making all of your customers feel like the only one.
We appreciate that.
Tracy?
Love it. Yep. So let's jump in. So Rob, talk to our audience today, all small and emerging brands about, when does emerging brand really need to start thinking about hiring a broker? When do they need a broker?
Yeah, it's a great question, and you know, many folks have a different thought process here, but think of this sooner than later, right? We talk to emerging brands sometimes that are 3 years, 2 years out, even before launching, right? So there's different conversations we'd like to have with emerging brands. So for us, the way we think about it, the way I think about it is, if you're probably 24 months to launch and inward, the things that you should have completed before we engage, right? Or what we're expecting here is, think of the brand has created a concept and moved it to a product or a solution, right? The manufacturing plan, the supply plan is ready to launch, or there's a set timeline. Contract manufacturers are set. There's multiple. They've been vetted. You've started to work in One World Sync. And most importantly, the brand position or point of difference, claims and benefits exist. They're apparent, right? So when we see those things in our first conversation, I think you're ready to take another step in the conversation with us, right? And more specifically, is if a brand is moving from supply manufacturing to more logistical help with distribution, transportation, order to cash, we should be talking at least 12 months before the launch, right? At times we'll work 18 months out with go-to-market strategy. And then really it's about figuring out, is this going to be an Amazon launch? What's best for the brand and how you're going to disrupt the category? Or is it an omni-channel launch, right? So these are things that we think about, and it depends, right, on where you are with your launch. But in a nutshell, we really believe that it's best to start earlier than later, and it should be at a minimum 18 months before launch, if you will.
Great. Hey, Rob, can you just tell the audience who One World Sync is? That might be the first mention we've had on the podcast, so a definition would be helpful.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, getting ready to launch, sometimes people feel that it's all about the supply chain and getting the marketing and who your target is. But there's some administrative things you have to do so that all retailers are ready to receive your SKUs, your ASINs. And think of building the specs of your UPCs, your ASINs, as well as the content. That is all kind of networked through One World Sync. It's a portal that all retailers, manufacturers kind of sync up together, and that's why it's called One World Sync.
Excellent. And ASIN, you just brought in another one.
Well, that's the version of traditional retailers UPC for Amazon, ASIN.
Right.
That's
okay.
The way I kind of collect on that.
No, that's perfect. Just want to make sure people are tracking this early in our discussion. So Rob, you touched on a little bit of this with Tracy's question, but people who think a representation firm is just going to, beat the door down and take their business, without question, that's not necessarily true. So can you speak about, what does the Emerson Group look for in an emerging brand before you even consider taking them on as a client?
Yeah, I'll take I hate the word vetting, but more the mutual assessment of a partnership, right? We take that very seriously because we're in the business of long-term, mid-term relationships, right? Not just 12-month relationships. So I think understanding more about the brand, their objectives, their timeline, their challenges, their opportunities, right? Even their people and culture, right? Fit's important for us. And it's not only about understanding the brand's, ethos or, what they want to accomplish, but it's also for them to understand us, our capabilities, our culture, our people, right? So that part, we do take some time with conversation of listening and understanding. I think that's first and foremost, in which we want to make sure we spend enough time that it's a mutual fit. I think from there, as you look at brands, and we want to make sure that the brand has every bit of success potential than any other brand that's launched in CPG or in health, wellness, and beauty. And the way we do that is we have a good dialogue around point of difference, right? what is the brand story, as well as their point of difference or unmet need that they're going to solve for the category. We definitely pressure test that to ensure that, whether you're a founder or you own the brand, that your passion meets what the consumer is looking for, what the retailers will pressure test us mutually on, right? So that's one thing we definitely look for. I think I mentioned it earlier, ensuring that the supply chain, the manufacturing is built. We understand the timeline, it's sustainable, and there's agility as well as options with different contract manufacturers, because things happen, right? So from a manufacturing, from a point of difference, those are two keys. I think the other one is just more of a understanding if there's investment around supply and marketing. We like to say it's hard, but easier to get on the shelf, physical or digital. It's harder to stay on the shelf, physical or digital, with good demand creation and understanding your consumer target is. So we'll talk through that. And then I think last but not least is probably just understanding the goals and objectives, right? Sometimes, a brand will come to us and there's this really short timeline. Not that we couldn't deliver on that, but we just need to understand what's the timeline, what are the goals, what are the objectives, what's the end goal? Sometimes brands come to us and we want to build a $100 million brand. Obviously that's very exciting. Sometimes they want to build a $20 million brand and sell the brand. So we need to just match strategies as well as objectives with resources. And then I probably missed this one, is just understanding their structure and their capabilities so that we can explain ours and we can be a mutual fit so resources are effective and efficient.
Good insight.
Thank you.
Good insight. Yeah, absolutely. So another question or topic we want to kind of dive into. So you talked about what you're looking for. So what specific questions should a small emerging brand be prepared for? As an example, you talked about supply chain, so you want to understand their capacity, right? So maybe talk a little bit about, do you ask about how very, I guess, personal questions like how are you funded, or what's your marketing plan? And one thing I loved about what you said, Rob, is, and I'll convert this to our bumper sticker that Bruce and I talk about all the time. It's not about sell in, it's about sell through. So how do you do a deep dive into your marketing plan and what your consumer pull plan is going to be for a small emerging brand?
Yeah, and it's interesting because some emerging brands come to us and their work is much further along, right? So sometimes we'll inform that, right, with category insights, but we're always keen on understanding where the brand is on building that marketing plan, that demand creation plan, and the investment that they're going to put into it, right? We're not here to be judge and jury. We're here to just pressure test the plan, understand it, and where we, right, can amplify it with our omni-channel team, right? I think that's another piece that we look for is understanding if it's consumer-led, if the investment is in the right place based on their target consumer and where that target consumer shops or gets educated or engages with categories, right? So we're always asking those types of questions. So one, we can understand it, we can inform it, elevate it, and then obviously execute for the brand at retail or on Amazon for that matter. So those are questions that we get into. I think the other questions, depends on where the emerging brand is in their life cycle, right? Some of these brands come to us and they've already launched on Amazon, right? So they're small, they're trying to be disruptive. They really know how to do the algorithm on Amazon, right? And what we try to understand is, how big are you, right? What type of communication is resonating with who you're targeting? Are you winning the search box, right? How expensive is it to get to the consumer? What are your ratings and reviews? What are they telling you? What's your repeat rate, right? So I think those are the kind of conversations we'll get to after what I mentioned earlier, so that we can understand, has the brand started to build a community, right, of consumers? Because as they migrate from Amazon to retail, the communication, the education, how you show up on that physical shop is very different. It's
Oh, yeah.
almost a different strategy, different approach. You don't have as much opportunity to educate with, like as far as content or imagery or claims and benefits, right? So those are things that we ask about. We also ask questions around their go-to-market strategy, right? Do they have a channel strategy? As if you're building this brand to go omni-channel, do you have a price pack architecture, right? We can help with those things. That's all part of our strategy support we afford brands is, pricing that you have established on Amazon has to be architected across retail, right? So there's no disruption or challenges. Are the packs right? Are your inners right as far as your cases? Do you have a map pricing set up, right? So these are all things that we just don't poke at, but we want to understand, can we help? Is it established? How close are you to really be omni-channel ready, if you will?
Yeah. And so what do you do, Rob, when you talk to a brand and obviously they're coming to you and they think that they're ready. So, and you're poking holes in all their stuff. So how do you handle it? I'm just curious when you're like, guys, we love the brand and we think you've got potential, but you're just not ready. You're not set up on One World Sync, or your supply chain is not, pressure tested yet. How do you address that? Because as we always say, Bruce and I, every brand owner or founder thinks their baby's beautiful, and you're going to tell them that their baby's not.
Yeah. Well, we try to stay away from the baby being ugly. I think sometimes just more about nurturing the baby, right? So that
Right.
when the baby grows up, it's ready for success and your resources are maximized, right? I'm
Mhm.
sure your board will love that, or whoever's investing behind the brand will love that as well. So it's really just more about having a transparent, respectful conversation to say, we see something, we see the gem, we see the spark that you're seeing in the brand. It's our responsibility, not as just a broker, but as a good partner, good steward of the brand, to say, if we were to get these things accomplished, right? If we've learned these things, if we listen to consumer, if we have this infrastructure ready, we can scale profitably and at a better clip from a timeline perspective. So we stay in touch with, there's sometimes, Tracy, that we'll meet a brand and we're like, you know what? You're 18 months out. We want to stay with you. We'll have quarterly touch bases with how are you doing? Are you progressing on what we talked about? How can we help? Right? How
Yeah.
can we do the work?
Love that.
Sometimes we do consulting work, right?
Yeah.
Strategy work, because we know how to execute, but we also can afford strategic help upstream so that downstream this brand shows up just like the passion and gem that we see in the brand.
Love that. That's perfect. Love that answer.
So one of the things, folks, that Rob said that Tracy and I talk about and other guests have brought up, either as something they wish they had done a better job on or something that's just critical, and it's controlling your pricing. I mean, Rob talked about price across channels and price pack architecture. A lot of this is kind of, for those of you that aren't deep in the industry, it's kind of industry lingo for being highly organized, right? Because you can't get so excited about a retailer or this, digital opportunity. Because if you look up one day, you've got 9 different pricing agreements and nothing makes sense. And it just makes your life miserable. And eventually your phone starts ringing with people saying, what's going on? How come their price is so much different than mine? So, Rob, thanks for that. So let's press on and put you on the other side of the table. What questions should an emerging brand use to screen a broker or sales agent? Like, what would you say? Look, if you only ask them a couple of questions, make sure you get to these.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think as I think about it, when we engage with emerging brands, and I said this in the onset, is we want to make sure we understand the brand and the people behind and the capabilities behind the brand and we want them to understand us, right? So if they're not asking questions, we almost either present our capabilities or our strengths and just kind of, ensure that they understand it. But if I was an emerging brand, here are some things that I would ask of that partner or the broker. First and foremost, years of service, right? I think that's important. understanding this industry is important. It is this is really hard. It's hard to open up a restaurant. It's even harder to open up a brand or launch a brand, right? So
Absolutely.
getting a partner that is fit for purpose and also has extreme experiences in the areas in which you're trying to launch, that's important. I think questions around what are your full capabilities, and is there an opportunity for us to mix and match based on what the capabilities that we as a company or brand have built, right? Because we want to make sure, this is the way we think about it, the Emerson Group is, if nothing is broken, we're not trying to fix a capability. We're trying to be a complement, a supplement, a really good partner. So the more that they understand our full suite of capabilities and the ability to segment or select those capabilities, I think that's important. I think the one thing is, can you do a channel launch versus a national launch, right? What are your expertise from a D2C launch as well as an omni-channel launch? I think those are questions, probing on the people, the team, the experience, continuity with retailers. That's important, because trust is built and you're the expert walking in the door of that retailer. So I think understanding, questioning that is important. I think also asking, are you open to us interviewing a retailer? Do you have recommendations from the industry at large, right? Can you share those? Those are all good questions. There are two sets of capabilities and work that has to be done for an established brand versus an emerging brand. So understanding what you do differently for emerging brands, any case studies. Have you built emerging brands from zero? And what are the learnings? What are the best practices, right? I'm just thinking here at large here as far as the other thing is more, what can you afford us from a partnership agency access as well? I think sometimes brands will come to us and they're so new to the industry that they have not built relationships, right? So I think that's another thing is, could we afford that emerging brand access to industry as well? So those are things that come top of mind as I was thinking about the question.
Lots to think about, right?
Yeah, that's a robust set of questions, Rob. Thank you.
So, Rob, you talk about strategic partnership, and when you mention that, and we've had a lot of guests mention that, I think of a marriage. And you talk about trust, you talk about communication. And so obviously there's going to be conflict in a relationship with the broker and the brand. So talk to us a little bit about what you see and how to handle that, because one of the things that I've seen lately is small emerging brands really struggle on how to manage a broker.
Yeah.
And have unrealistic expectations. I think that's a big issue that causes conflict.
Yeah, I think it's a great deep question, right?
I like
I said it in the onset. I think, really taking the time to mutually understand each other is really important on the onset, right? You get a sense of the culture, right? The way companies want to work, and if expectations are aspirational, stretch, but realistic, right? And I think that's all part of the initial engagement, if you will. But you said it, conflicts always exist, unfortunately, in marriages and in business. To me, it's really about setting the right expectations and the right goals, and communicate, how we're doing, why we're not achieving, if we're achieving, right? So it's all around expectations and communication. To me, is that at the core. But conflicts could be in two areas. They could be, either the strategy isn't unfolding the way we thought. So can we be agile? Can we be good listeners and good partners to change the strategy, right? So there could be conflicts along that journey. I think another conflict, maybe where you were going, is more, sometimes we'll get this, is category conflict, right?
Yes.
So we're not I'm going to just say it, and I'm going to lean into this because we've earned this, right? We're at a point where we have multiple brands in categories. And to me, if trust has been built, what we try to shift the conversations think of as brand A, B, or C. We have a consumer category mindset, right? What we're trying to do with retailers is we want to show up in an unbiased way. But then with our brand partners, we will pressure test, like we said in the onset, what your point of difference is and what your role in the category is. If we can clearly define that and articulate that, the conflict is minimized. Are there times when there's conflict and sometimes there's, results where I've lost a SKU or gained a SKU? There's going to be wins and losses along the way. We have not been undefeated for any brand for 30 years.
Right.
But that's about setting the right expectation. But if we can communicate the whys, what happened, right, and what we're going to do differently, there's where trust and respect is built. But you have to take conflict as just part of the journey. And to me, ultimately, sometimes the conflict builds better partnerships and builds long-term trust.
Yeah, that's so good. And what comes to mind is that we've run across brands like, well, what's your sales goal for the year? Well, I want to be, a $10 million brand by the end of the year. And so it's a very gentle, very tough question to answer. Like, well, that's not really a realistic target. Let's walk through why you think you're going to get to 10 million, and we're going to tell you here's the reasons why we think that's a little unrealistic. So it's a fine line and a fine dance, don't you think?
Agreed. Well said.
Well, the other thing, Rob, that Tracy and I confront when we talk to some of these smaller brands and they're looking for representation is when they say, well, we're not going to accept anyone with a conflict. And we're like, well, then you're probably not going to find anyone who's capable.
Right.
And we try to tell these folks that having multiple brands in a category can be beneficial because then that sales agent or broker has deeper and deeper knowledge of that category. They know what will and won't work, and the retailer leans on them more because they're a deeper pool of knowledge.
Yeah. You Bruce, that was brilliant. That sparked a thought where it's sometimes we try to make the emerging brand understand that our scale in a category allows us to influence with respect with the retailer. It provides us thought leadership. At times where there's opportunity, it's category captainship, as we like to say, right? So that comes with better engagement with the retailer, and more thought leadership opportunities, so that an emerging brand's role can be conveyed to the retailer more than just at a line review, right? That'll unlock in that category exploratory conversations with the retailer even before the brand is ready to launch. Those co-creations are really powerful for emerging brands with retailers. So it's really unlocking the benefits versus the negatives that just intuitively a brand would be like, well, you're working with three of my competitors. Yes, but if we have a clear point of difference, while they're a competitor in the category, you have a defined role that we need to articulate to the retailer so they value you, because that's really what they're trying to do when they build brands for categories. Is points of difference, incrementality, right? And how do I solve unmet needs for my consumer, my shopper?
That's great. So Rob, let's go to the next level. So now you've vetted a small emerging brand. Both sides of the table think that this could be a good partnership. So Rob, what should an emerging brand expect of a broker or sales agent? What exactly will they do for their clients?
Yeah, I mean, the way we think about it is whether it's a digital platform like Amazon or a Walmart or a CVS, first and foremost, we own the retailer engagement. And what that means is, one, we have a team walking into the door of a retailer, let's just say, right? And we understand the retailer strategy from a macro perspective. I think that informs our strategies from a brand and category. We understand a category strategy. I think the other thing is category review timelines are very, very important, right? I mean, understanding that timeline helps us build the right business plan for that brand, whether they're launching or expanding, because you don't want to miss timelines, because that at times could put you behind the eight ball for 12 months, right? So we really understand the timeline, and when it changes, there are times in which there is no category review. So it's much more fluid, and we know how to engage in those timelines as well, right? I think the other things that the brand should feel comfortable that we understand cost of entries, right? Whether it's fees, administrative fees, promo fees, understanding which ones deliver the best ROI. We understand the retailer's policies. We understand which assets or opportunities can create demand from a retailer perspective, right? Whether that's retail media or some other 4Ps opportunities. But we understand all that. We understand how to get into and manage the portal. Every retailer has a portal where you either do new item submissions, promo planning, price changes, right? So we understand it, we work in it, and we do all the administrative work. Deductions, chargebacks is part of life, and we manage those whether they're valid or invalid. So we'll fight to understand why deductions are invalid, and we'll get to resolution for the brand. I think one of the other things that we really take pride in is understanding category hurdle rates. This is also about level setting expectations, right? So understanding what success looks like within a category that a brand needs to hit to stay on the physical or digital shelf is important. But we own all that, and in a nutshell, we're the expert of the retailer, right? So that the brand understands, and we can strategize and execute flawlessly for the brand. I think the other thing, some other things that the brand should expect is, clear, often transparent communication, right? With whether it's wins and losses, whether it's changes at a retailer, that's something that emerging brands should expect. I think the other thing that a brand should expect is that we'll help build the retailer plan, both strategy as well as tactics at that retailer. We'll do all the administrative work that I mentioned. We'll negotiate best contracts and terms. They should expect that as well. I think the other thing that they should expect is we are going to help set a category story and insight so that the brand can sit within that category with a higher rate of success. It will also deliver competitive intelligence, as well as lastly, this is one that I'm going to just spend a second on, is around forecasting. We get asked this question a lot.
I'm sure.
Because it's important to inform the supply for the brand, and resources are maximized. We don't run an S&OP process. That is something that we expect the brand to run. However, we can be the inputs, whether it's adds and deletes, understanding of when they happen, understanding the pipeline, as well as the turn. We give those inputs. Display forecasting, promotional forecasting. We just don't do the demand creation part of S&OP process. But that's what they should expect. We should be a good partner as far as forecast inputs. So those are all things. There's others, but those are the things that come to mind.
So that was great, Rob. So there's a couple of things there, folks. First off, for those of you that aren't in the business all the time, the portals Rob's talking about, and Tracy can chime in here too, is every retailer has their own kind of online system. And Tracy and I, we interviewed retailers or buyers from 12 of the largest retailers, and all of them said it is so frustrating when they finally decide to bet on a brand and they can't figure out how to get set up.
Yeah.
So your sales agent or broker, they know their way around that portal. They know their way. The other thing, Rob, if you could just give a second, I'm going to assume you guys are positive on helping your emerging brands develop a relationship with the retailer. You don't expect them to just offload that, whether it's meeting at industry events or coming on those line reviews, whether they're in person or Zoom. But, the brands need to have that relationship as well. They count on the Emerson Group, but they should know who that buyer is at Kroger, H-E-B, Walgreens, Walmart, fill in the blank.
Agreed. I think clarity of objectives of certain meetings or certain engagements with the retailer is important to kind of outline that. Clarity of roles and responsibility, that's important as well. But the way we approach it, our philosophy is we always want the brand to be with us when we engage with the retailer. At times, they'll be in front of us, At times they'll be beside us. And at times, usually more from an administrative, they'll sit behind us and we'll do that. But it is a joint partnership and in all facets of that engagement with the retailer. But understanding the objectives of that meeting and whose role is going to be what in those points of engagement, absolutely. But we are stewards of not only weekly, monthly meetings with the retailer, but we're also really engaged with industry events as well to make sure that one, they know who the retailers are, who those key contacts are, and they have points of engagement, right? It's not always a line review conversation, right? At times it is that, but sometimes there's exploratory conversations, sometimes there's industry events in which we'll steward, like you said.
Great. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, that's great insight. And so we kind of dove down into our next topic, which is about that relationship. And what I think, Rob, you said that's great is we want the brand involved. You know, it's a joint partnership. You both, I think what you're saying is you both own that relationship with the retailer. You're not trying to exclude the brand from any kind of meeting or anything like that. So I think that's a great point to tell our small emerging brand audience. So, Bruce, you want to talk about compensation?
Sure. So, Rob, how would, in your experience on both sides of the desk here, what are some of the high level compensation models an emerging brand should have in their mind? How do they pay these people? Because no one's going to work for free, and no one's going to work on just plain old commission when there's no sales.
Yeah.
At least I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely goodwill that's done. But from a compensation perspective, it first and foremost is where is the brand in its launch stage, right? So at times the brand isn't ready for retail, and there's, I'll just say 3, 6, 12 months of consulting or setup that's done. Typically, and during that time when there's no sales, it's more of a consulting fee or a monthly rate that is negotiated and agreed upon, right? Depending on the work that needs to get done. But in that time frame, there is a lot of work around, like I said, strategy, setup, planning, right? Before one, I'll say, SKU is sold or ASIN is sold, right? So in that framework, it's typically a monthly fee. Once the sales start to happen, it's typically a sales commission on your sales rate or sales velocity. There's also data fees that at times will be contracted. And then afterwards, the rates will have a sliding scale. At times, the work that needs to be done for a brand that's from 0 to 10 million is different from a 10 to a 50 million, 50 to 100 million, right? So there is sliding scale that I would encourage brands to think through as well, right? So the last thing that we want to be is a big line on the P&L. So as the brand gets bigger, right, there's sliding scale opportunities as well. But it's typically consulting fee, sales and data fees, and potentially those milestones. We at the Emerson Group also partake in potentially, if there's the right fit, right opportunity for equity investment, that is not mandatory. And then from a terms perspective, they typically are annual duration of contracts with anywhere from 30 to 60-day terminations, right? And the terminations, to me, it's all about doing it respectfully. These things happen. It's part of business. Fortunately for us at the Emerson Group, we don't see that very, very often. It's rarely happened, but it can happen. So having the right terms and conditions is important.
Awesome.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about this, so we're going to talk and maybe in a little different mindset in this next topic, which is, so I'm a D2C brand. I'm doing really well. Now I'm entering in this relationship with the Emerson Group. What's the best advice you would give a brand that's just new to retail and new to managing or working with a broker? What would you what advice would you give them as they're starting out? Because this is all new to them. They've never done this before. They've been a D2C brand and they've been kind of on their own. And maybe it's a founder and one other person. And now all of a sudden they've got this relationship with the Emerson Group and this big family that they just inherited. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think the advice is just more seek to understand and learn with us as far as where you've been and where you're going. What's gained you success of where you've been may not be the same, I'll say, recipe for future success. So I think just being willing to, collaborate on the next part of the journey, I think that's the right mindset. I think the other thing is sharing with us what's been working, where the challenges are as well, what you've learned about your consumer if you've been on Amazon. So willing to share what's worked and what's not, whether it's marketing or supply chain, or what have you, right? It's just more about sharing so that we can understand deeply and we can plan collectively, right? So I think that just, it's hard, right? Because trust is built over time and through experiences, but being that willing partner to share, listen, mutually listen, quite frankly, is important. I think those are all things that I would highly recommend. I think the other thing is typically an emerging brand will come to us with a strategy or a timeline on where they want to go, at what rate and at what time increments, right? And being willing to flex with us based on what we see and what we can share. I think that's another important thing for the brand, right? And it's not about us slowing them down or at times making them go faster. It's just about having that conversation so that we can deliver on the expectations. So those are, Tracy, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but those are
No,
things I
it's
think
no,
about.
that's good. You did absolutely. That's perfect. That's perfect. Bruce?
Yeah. So Rob, we touched on this a little bit earlier in the discussion, but I think it at that point it kind of morphed into conflicts. Like, you're representing 5 skincare brands. I want you to have no one but me, and you spoke about why that's not only illogical, but why it might be beneficial to have more. How do you recommend an emerging brand where the founder and their team are not necessarily CPG veterans? How do they work through a rough spot in the relationship with their broker before they just, think the only choice is to hit the eject button and go on down the road? Because we all know the grass isn't always greener. And we also know that it's human nature to not look in the mirror and ask, what parts could I be doing better on? Or at least usually people don't look there first. They look there maybe 14th.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be conflict and there's always going to be rough patches. If there's not, we're either delusional or we're not stretching each other hard enough, right? So I think just acknowledging that there's going to be challenges, right? To me is there's the pre, during, and post of the patches. So one, making sure you have set expectations, realistic, aligned goals, KPIs, clear roles and responsibilities, I think is foundational. That's the kind of the pre. I think the during is about communicate, communicate, communicate. And I can't say that enough. And it's about proactive communication. It's clear lines of transparency. I think set rules of engagement as well, right? Not everything's a fire drill, right? We should set processes. We should also set like, hey, if we need to elevate, and sometimes it's actually me here at the Emerson Group, come to me, right? And I will guide the conversation, and also obviously elevate it and resolve it, right? But we have to have a mutual respect that not everything's a fire drill, because then afterwards, nothing becomes important, right? So I think it's having that mutual ways of working, and then afterwards, it's more about like, after we've had that conversation, the communication is ensuring, right, that we've resolved the rough patch, right? And there's no lingering effect, because these partnerships are all built on trust, right? Mutual respect. If there's something it's like any other relationship, right? If you haven't gotten everything out of, on the table and you've talked it through in a respectful, transparent way, with resolution, you can't move forward. It's always there. So that's kind of the pre, during, and post kind of way I think about it, quite frankly, around rough patches.
Yes. That
I welcome, the mindset of they're going to happen, and be ready for it. Because to me, as the rough patches happen and we get through them, I just find the trust and relationship just gets to another level.
Grows. Yeah, that makes
yeah.
perfect sense.
That's great. A couple of things, folks. Rob said every situation that happens can't be break the glass, right? Sometimes things just happen, and if you break the glass all the time, no one's going to hear you when you really need to. And the other thing, as Rob said, with the roles and responsibilities, one of the things that dovetails into is who are your points of contact and coverage? Because whether you're a gigantic brand or a small brand, your representation firm does not want 14 different people calling in to different people talking about the same subject. So if Rob's the guy you call when the house is on fire, one person calls Rob. Not 14 call Rob, or 14 people call 14 people inside your representation firm. That just leads people to frankly not take you seriously.
Yeah.
Tracy?
So, Rob, we're, as Bruce says, rounding third base here on our time together. So, talk to us about who has had the greatest impact on your career and why.
Yeah, I think, wow, that's I need to kind of sit back here for a second, but after spending 30 years in the industry, I've been one, it's an amazing industry that we're fortunate to be part of, right? And it's all about the people on the journey that you've met, whether it's been mentors, leaders, even colleagues, quite frankly. And it's really the people that have challenged me to take a new role, out of my comfort zone, challenged me to think differently, coached me through challenging times, or always just kind of encouraged me to improve, right? So I think those are the people that have met the most. I'm not going to name names, but I've been fortunate to have really great mentors and leaders along my career. And here at the Emerson Group, this is not any different, right? So we're fortunate to have great people, great brands, great partners in the industry that it's a fun journey. So yeah.
Awesome. Love that. Love them. Bruce?
Yeah. Okay, Rob. So the fun question that we always ask the guests, who is your favorite football team, brand, or band, and why do you support them? And since I already know your answer, you have my pity.
Yes. Yeah. I could go band just to make it easier for myself, but that's not really the conversation we just have. So my favorite football team growing up in northern New Jersey is the New York Giants. So and I get we're in a tough patch or a rough patch, right? But we'll get through it. But the Emerson Group is based right outside of Philadelphia, and I will tell you, Philadelphia Eagles fans are very passionate, and
Oh, yes.
they're laying it on thick right now for us New Yorkers. But it's okay.
I'm
This too
sure.
shall pass. We'll
Yeah,
we'll,
yeah.
we'll hold our chins up high. But it is tough right now. But I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah.
Loyalty is important. So
It is important. I would have loved to have been in the meeting when the decision was made to let Saquon Barkley go for nothing.
I knew you were
Those
going to go there. I knew you were going to go there.
I'm going to
do
send
we have
Rob
any?
his Philadelphia Eagles hat so that he doesn't get assaulted during Super Bowl time. This will probably drop potentially the week after. So, well,
Yeah.
Rob, thank you so much for coming on the show. How could people get in touch with you to learn more about what you talked about today, or learn more about the Emerson Group?
Yeah, the couple ways. First, you can reach out to me at emersongroup.com. That's probably the easiest, but the more personal way, my email address is simply rob dot my last name Catanzariti at emersongroup.com. So please drop me a line if I can answer any questions, or quite frankly, if we can help your brand either launch or continue to grow. Please drop me a line. And
Thank you,
Bruce and
Rob. All
Tracy,
right,
thank
Tracy,
you.
the big finish.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us today, Rob. It was extremely insightful, and I know our small emerging brand audience is going to love it. So continue to follow us, audience, on our Spotify, Apple at Road, the number to Retail. We do post episodes every Tuesday. We also have a new website, www.roadtoretail.com. So please join us on any of those platforms as you wish. And thanks again, Rob. We really appreciate it.
Good luck out there, folks.